Is that real?
The whole time you pretended to be my friend. You made me do this.
You know, a lot of stuff has happened in the past few days. A couple of days ago, we had April Fools, which gave me some of the biggest false hopes in my entire life. The Minecraft movie also came out, and it might be the most divisive movie release I have seen in my entire life. But most importantly, we had the Switch 2 Direct on the 2nd, and honestly, for the most part, it was amazing. I mean, we're getting a new Mario Kart after over 11 years since Mario Kart 8, Donkey Kong Bonanza, a new Hyrule Warriors, Switch 2 upgrades to Switch 1 games, Kirby Air Riders, and a fucking FromSoft game exclusive to the system. That is insane. And it's pretty funny because I went into this very cautiously optimistic, mainly when it came down to Nintendo Switch Online, but they even managed to surprise me with that. I mean, GameCube games and group chats, this is basically everything that I wanted. Granted, the screen sharing feature ran like a goddamn PowerPoint presentation, but hey, still better than that dumbass phone app. So yeah, there surprisingly aren't any problems or red flags with the Switch 2. It seems almost perfect, and I'm really excited for it to begin the next generation of gaming, and for me to be able to get my hands on it. What? Okay, yeah, I get it. Alright, okay, I said I get it! Stop with the subtle foreshadowing!
This thing is trash!
You know, I am honestly shocked by Nintendo's ability to get me excited so consistently and proceed to crush all my hopes and dreams right after so consistently. The 35th anniversary of Mario, Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, literally any of their remasters. But by far the Switch 2 takes the cake for the most disappointing thing Nintendo has made in recent times. And I remember thinking to myself when the Direct ended, wow, this console looks really good. I sure hope that it's going to be at a reasonable price. Huh? $450? They have lost their minds. There are so many things wrong with that price tag. First off, it's more expensive than a Series S and a PS5 digital edition, and it comes with absolutely nothing. Well, they made a tech demo to show off the capabilities of the console, the welcome tour, but you have to pay for it. Because apparently the subtitle "F*** you" was copyright claimed, so it was the next best option. Meanwhile, the PS5 comes with Astro's Playroom for free, which is far more interesting than the Switch 2 welcome tour. And the Series S does not come with anything, but you know what you can get with the 150 euros you're gonna save? About 8 months of Game Pass, so I don't think there's much of an excuse for the Switch 2 here. And here's a little funny thing I figured out recently. If we were to compare the price of the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 to the console that it's most similar to specs-wise, we see that the Switch 1 is cheaper than the best version of the Xbox 360. Meanwhile, the Switch 2 is more expensive than the PS4. Now that should already be a massive red flag to everybody watching, but because I am someone who truly wants to be fair, I will adjust the prices for inflation. So if we take a look at the updated prices, the gap between the Xbox 360 and the Switch 2 grows even larger, and the PS4 does end up being more expensive than the Switch 2. By only 36 euros. Oh, Jesus Christ. You know, if the PS4 had came out 5 years ago, I'd understand that the Switch 2 would be more expensive, because on top of cramming all the hardware required to run the console in a much smaller space, you also need to have all the other stuff, such as the screen, the microphone, you know, all that jazz. One problem though, the PS4 did not come out 5 years ago. It came out 11 years ago. And by the way, so far I've only brought up the prices for us Europeans. But if you live in America, good luck with tariffs. But if it was just the console that was grossly overpriced and the games were placed at a much more reasonable point, I would still be pissed, but not nearly as much. But unfortunately, we live in reality. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to yell at a very loud volume. $90 for Mario Kart World. Oh my god, there are so many things wrong with that image. But honestly, I don't think I need to explain anything. You can show that image to anyone, even someone who is very unfamiliar with games. And I can guarantee you that they'll say that this is complete insanity. There is absolutely no defending this. Those fuckers are charging 80 euros digital or 90 physical to play a video game that looks graphically identical to the one we had 10 years ago. Absolutely disgusting. Oh, and also, you know all those Switch 1 games that you have in your library? And you know how some of them have a horrible optimization? Yeah, well now you can play them at 4K 60 FPS for an additional 20 euros. So let me get this straight. To use the product that I already own in a somewhat acceptable state, I need to drop an additional 20 euros? Are you out of your mind? At least Sony only makes us pay 10 euros. And the reason why it's extra is because it adds extra content like in Super Mario Party Jamboree that uses the new features of the console. And those new minigames they have designed have to be some of the laziest and soulless minigames of all time. Trying to validate those new features but not having enough time to do anything interesting with them. Yeah, a couple of basic new minigames for 20 euros. Or you could buy Octo expansion for the same price, you know, your choice. The Zelda ones are even more egregious. Like, these games have such terrible optimization. They desperately needed a performance patch. So not only are they locking that behind the paywall, which is gonna force people to shell out even more money if they want to have a decent experience, but on top of that, the features that they decided to introduce are tools that allow you to find Korok seeds more easily. This company has taken the most annoying part of Breath of the Wild and not only locks it down to the Switch 2 version, but also forces you to spend 10 euros to use it. What is wrong with you? And there are so many other horrible things about this reveal that honestly I could keep going for another hour and still not be done. But by far the worst part about this whole deal is the fact that some people are perfectly fine with it. Let me repeat that. Some people saw Nintendo charging the same amount as a PS5 for a significantly weaker console, charging 90 euros for a physical game, literally doing the exact horrible things that the competition does, but even worse. And somehow they're still on the front lines, ready to glaze Nintendo until the day they die. Nintendo could literally spit in their mouths, ask 60 euros for the convenience fee, and these fuckers would still be trying to defend them releasing 60 euros remasters of 15-year-old video games that costed 20 euros at a certain point. That's how you know that parasocial relationships are way more present than you'd imagine. My god. Oh, and also, I have heard some of the stupidest arguments from the dick riders that just shows how disconnected from reality some people are. Oh well, the prices of video games were far more expensive back in the day, so why are you younglings complaining about games being expensive now? 1. Our purchasing power is literally at the lowest point it's ever been in human history. People can barely get enough money to pay for food and housing. And now you expect us to drop 500 euros just to play Mario Kart? Yeah, no. 2. When adjusted for inflation, SNES cards were far more expensive to produce than Switch cards. And let's not even talk about the N64 cartridges. Those things were absurdly expensive. So those games being so expensive makes sense because the cards were more expensive to make. But another thing that people seem to forget is that gaming is far more popular than it has ever been, and by proxy, the potential market that you can sell your game to is far higher. That's why games are technically at the cheapest point they've ever been, as companies can allow themselves to sell their games for a lower margin and compensate on the larger amount of copies sold. And Mario Kart in particular is the perfect example of this. We are talking about the game franchise that appears twice on the best-selling game list of all time. They should be able to sell this game at like 40 bucks and still turn a profit, but they don't, because they know they can get away with it. And 3. You can't even say that Switch cards are expensive to justify the high price tag, because there's nothing on the card. Yes, you heard me. Nintendo's new innovation is game key cards. Rather than having the data on the card itself, the game card just acts as a license for you to download the game. There is nothing on the card, it's useless. So if you add 10 euros to an already overpriced video game, all you get is a box that you can display on your shelf. Absolutely shameless behavior. Oh, but Nintendo is a premium brand. They aren't meant for broke niggas like you. If you can't pay for it, then go back on Xbox. Since when? As far as I'm aware, Nintendo can give out some amazing deals. Oh, what? You don't believe me? Well, alright, let me give you some examples. The NES Top Loader, the SNES Junior, the GBA with Player's Choice, the GameCube with Player's Choice, the 2DS with Nintendo Selects, the Wii U with 2 games included and Nintendo Selects. Do I need to go on? Even during times where they were doing pretty well, like during the 7th generation for example, they could still give out good deals, like the Wii Mini. For 100 euros, you could get one Wii with Mario Kart Wii bundled with it. And that's not even counting Nintendo Selects. And it still felt like they were a bit humble during 2017. Once again, coming back to the price comparison, this anti-consumeristic approach only started after 2018, when they realized that people were stupid enough to buy 60 euros versions of games that were previously 20 euros. We shouldn't have tolerated this behavior back in 2018, and we still shouldn't tolerate it now. Oh, but people were already buying upgrades back on the PS1. Why are you guys only complaining about it now on the Switch too? What kind of fucking argument is that? Do you really think people were filled with joy when they realized that they had to buy their SNES or Mega Drive library again on their PS1? Do you really think that they were so excited to learn that all the games they had collected were now worthless on their new platform and that they had to shell out hundreds of dollars again? People didn't like this kind of stuff back then, and they shouldn't tolerate it nowadays, because at least the N64 and Saturn had an excuse, being that they weren't backwards compatible with the previous systems. But now you're gonna have games that are just gonna get free patches, but for some reason they decided to add useless bullshit that nobody cares about in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom just so that they could charge an extra 10 euros. That just shows how desperate they are to get some extra cash from you. The games are good. Yeah, that's it. The games are good, so they're worth the price. I know you're just one of those Nintendo haters that's always criticizing them for no reason. Well, yeah, they might cancel Smash tournaments for no reason. Yeah, they might gatekeep emulation and make older games inaccessible. And they might upcharge an absurd amount for 20-year-old games that should cost at the most 10 euros. But the games are good, so all criticism is irrelevant. Nintendo is perfect. Leave the multi-billion company alone. Let people enjoy things. No. I will not tolerate this. Nobody should tolerate this. No video game on this planet is worth 90 euros. Not GTA 6, not Half-Life 3, and definitely not Mario Kart World. Absolutely no video game is worth spending 20% of the console's price to experience. Nothing. Oh, and this isn't just a matter of it being way too expensive now. We're also talking about the future here. You guys remember a couple of months ago when there were rumors that GTA 6 would be 100 euros? Of course, everybody justifyingly got pissed off, and with all the noise that was made on social media, there could have been a chance that Rockstar would have lowered the price. But now that Nintendo came in and announced that 90 euros games are going to be the standard, yeah, I feel like GTA 6 being 100 euros is no longer a possibility, but rather certainty. And after Nintendo makes their game 90 euros, it's gonna be EA, then Activision, then Bethesda, then Sony, then Microsoft. Then games are gonna cost 100 euros, 120, 150. Nintendo selling their games at 90 euros sets a horrible precedent for future game prices. And in the current state of the gaming industry that's already filled with microtransactions and battle passes, the last thing we need is for games to cost over 100 euros. Oh my god. But anyways, with that being said, what's the solution to this problem? Well, if you've been listening during this video, I don't think I should even have to explain this to you, as I imagine that most of you figured it out pretty easily. But if Nintendo keeps releasing products that are of unacceptable quality or way too overpriced, stop giving them your fucking money! God, it's not that hard!